Welcome to Pod Me If You Can, where we find stars in obscure films and we tell you all about them. Lloyd, what's today's film?
Today's film is Highwaymen, starring Jim Caviezel, Ron Amitra, and Colin Fiore.
Pardon me if you can. Movie reviews.
James Rennie Cray, played by Jim Caviezel, desperately runs towards his wife, but is too late and she is brutally run over by a crazy driver. 5 years later, Molly Poole, played by the stunning Ron Amitra, is being chased by a crazy driver when suddenly she is rescued by James Cray. She becomes caught in a cat-and-mouse game between a crazy psychopathic driver, played by Colin Fiore, who has been randomly killing people with his car, and of course the hero James Cray, who has lost his wife to this madman and now has dedicated his life to finding him and stopping him. Highwayman came out in 2004 and was directed by Robert Harmon, who also made the cult classic The Hitcher, which came out in 1986. There is some great economy in this movie. There is a lot of key scenes, especially the opening, which is told without any dialogue, just the actors and their eyes going through the motions and a lot of their body language. It was also supported by a pretty solid score, and this is a very bare bones action movie. It only goes on for 81 minutes, which is pretty interesting. There are some great practical effects in this movie, and there was also a lot of green screen used, like when they were driving, and a lot of the key dialogue scenes, like they're just driving the highway talking to each other. In my opinion, I'm pretty sure a lot of that was shot in green screen, which is really weird because once we get to the car combat scenes, the actual car action scenes, it's all practical and real, and there's really awesome choreography. So it's just, you know, just jarring to see that, you know, for simple dialogue scenes, you just think, well, can't you just shoot that on the highway? A lot of the action was in the same vein as Tarantino's Death Proof, and of course, the Australian film Mad Max, starring Mel Gibson. Can't wait for the remake. There is great choreography to the action here as well. Rather than overlong chase sequence, well, there kind of is elaborate chase sequences in this, but the actual car combat is really simple. They just crash into each other. Most, of course, action films of today have really overlong car chase sequences that just go on and on, but this one, once they get to the battle, it's really straightforward and simple. I'm not too familiar with this genre. I know there's a lot of Australian exploitation films that utilize the car combat genre, as example, of course, being Mad Max, and I haven't even seen The Hitcher, so I'm not too good with this genre at all. What I love here is the female character played by Ron Amitra, and gee, Dave, I think she's absolutely stunning. She goes completely against the conventions of the damsel in distress. Yes, she is a person that needs to be rescued, but she is a willing damsel in distress. There is a point in this movie where the psychopathic driver Colin Fiore wants to get the girl, you know, obviously wants to kill her, and the hero Jim Caviezel basically puts her in harm's way, like has a plan to put her as bait so he can get to him. And rather than get into that whole argument, this is crazy, I don't want anything to do with this, she just agrees to go along. And also, the moment she gets free, she fights, and in the most dire even in the most dire of situations, she desperately tries to help out a friend. I think she's a really cool character, and I think Ron Amitra, a very stunning girl, played her really well. Very good physical actor. She takes direction really well, I think, action direction. The villain, played by Colin Fiore, is really interesting. Butchered and disfigured by car accidents, he's become a weak, disabled person who's obviously psychopathic, driving around America killing people randomly. He's got like a missing hand. Obviously, he's in a wheelchair, and the whole car is built around him. And there's a great line that I think really sums it up, like how Jim Caviezel's chasing, "We must tear the slug from its shell." And there's really interesting themes here of modern machine and flesh marrying together to create this like modern monster. I find that really interesting, and Colin Fiore is obviously a really good actor.
He's not permanently in the car, is he?
No, he's not. But
okay.
There is a scene at the end where he gets out, and you can see he's just just in a wheelchair, so the fragility of the character is really exposed. As I said, the slug from its shell. The only issue with this movie is some of the credibility of the story. Like, it is pretty much a slasher film logic story, and a lot of the plot holes. There's like this scene where he's driving with this cop, and they get to the climax, like, okay, here it is, this is where we meet him, and the cop tries to call in for help on the radio, and he doesn't get any signal. It's just like, you knew where you were going. Couldn't you just call in help earlier? And why don't you have a mobile phone? Like, little scenes like that just took me completely out of it. But again, it's that slasher film logic, so you sort of have to go with it. Also, there is a lot of flashback sequences in the film, particularly at the middle part, which I think really slowed down the film and was really unnecessary. They basically talk about Jim Caviezel and what he's been doing for the last 5 years, Ron Mitra and her parents, and Colin Fiore, how he became to be. I think all that was unnecessary. From the brilliant opening, you see his wife being run over by this crazy driver, and then the next time you see Jim Caviezel, he's helping Ron Mitra so the same thing doesn't happen to her. That's all we needed to know. I don't think we needed all this backstory that really slowed down the film, but I guess you can argue it fleshes out the characters in a way. At its best, I think the film is a really good Walter Hill movie, mainly The Driver, Streets of Fire, and of course The Warriors, some of my favorite action movies of all time. The film also challenges the sanity of the hero, if he will ever recover from the brutal loss of his wife and the quicksand of revenge itself. The hero of the movie, Jim Caviezel, drives this really awesome car, which is a 1968 Plymouth Barracuda, and he's like this white knight, and the car his brilliant steed, you know, and Jim Caviezel is this twisted monster riding this really disfigured dragon, and the two must duke it out on this mythical highway. And it's even pushed even more that he has to rescue the princess, as Colin Fiore gets Ron Mitra to wear this beautiful red dress. So there's interesting play here on the conventions of heroes and villains, and again, the damsel in distress. I really, really like this movie, Highwaymen. The middle of it really needed a lot of work, some really loose plot holes, and really unnecessary flashbacks, but at 81 minutes, a straightforward action movie. I highly recommend this.
That's so frustrating, though, that at 81 minutes it seems like it has long parts.
Yeah,
you know?
I know, and it's so lean.
Yeah. What's your favorite Jim Caviezel movie? I really like Frequency. Maybe not my favorite, but I really like his performance in that with Dennis Quaid.
That's a good question. I haven't seen Frequency. What, you know that show that's been running?
Person of Interest.
I love that. I love that show. I've only seen 3 episodes, but I think he is awesome in that. I really want to get into that, but I'm not sure if it's still running. It's certainly, I don't think it's even playing in Australia anymore. But from the episodes I've seen, I think it's awesome.
Jim Caviezel's great, so this is like probably one to check out, I think.
Yep.
You can find more from us and obscure films with famous people in them at our YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and podmeifyoucan.com.
Thanks for watching. If you like what you see, please hit the subscribe button. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Check out our podcast at www.podmeifyoucan.com.